Hello, everyone. Thank you for the child's introduction. Again, my name is Yimin Chen, and it's my great pleasure to present our paper, EyeTell Video-Assisted Touchscreen Keystroke Inference from Eye Movement. And this is a joint work with my colleague, Mr. Tao Li, and my supervisor, Professor Yan Chao Zhang, and Ms. Terry Hedgepeth at ASU, and also another professor from Professor Rui Zhang from University of Delaware. So in the past decade, mobile devices start to dominate all the internet-connected devices. Here we show a figure from Cisco's internet report, and we can see from the figure that a smartphone has the largest number among all the devices. And we all input some sensitive content on our phone. For example, password, URL, or emails. And due to their popularity, keystroke inference attack on mobile devices is attracting more and more attention. So in fact, they have been extended investigate in the past decade. And to give you some flavor of the most recent research outcome, I use three systems as the example. There are mainly three attack categories, video-based and sensor-based, and finally Wi-Fi-based. And as an example, video-based attack, in a 2017 NDSS paper, they also proposed to extract finger movement from a video for keystroke inference. In their system, the requirement is that the attacker is able to record the finger movement on the touch screen directly. And for sensor-based attack, in a 2012 Mobisis paper, they also proposed tapping. And tapping use accelerometer and gyroscope data for keystroke inference. In their system, they require that the attacker was able to install malware in order to obtain onboard sensor data. And finally, we have the Wi-Fi-based attack. So in CCS16, they also proposed a system called WinTalker. In this system, they exploited channel state information data for keystroke inference. For their system, the requirement is that the requirement is that, for example, the position, the distance, the orientation of the attacker and the victim's device remain unchanged during the training and testing phase. So compared with this existing work, our system does not require the attacker to capture either the finger movement or any part of the victim's device, nor we assume that the attacker is able to obtain any sensor data from the victim's device. Instead, we assume that the attacker is able to record a video capturing the victim's device. Under such adversary model, so actually previous system cannot work. Our system, we call it EyeTell, is inspired by the observation that mobile device users tend to eye track their finger movement on the touch screen when they input on the soft keyboard. Therefore, by extracting the eye movement from the video, the attacker is able to infer the corresponding keystroke. Here is, in this figure, we show the attack scenario. So the attacker will use some device, for example, camcorder, to record video of the victim. And the victim will hold the device right in front of himself. And we expect that such a holding position is quite common in real life. our system mainly consists of two modules, gauge trace extraction and gauge trace decoding. We will include more detail in the following. And the first step is gauge trace extraction. So we use an eye tracking technique that is user independent. And the desirable benefit is that using this technique, we do not need to pre-train the algorithm on each individual victim. And for gauge trace extraction, we need three main steps. First, we need to use a popular classifier to detect the eye region and also estimate the center of the eye. Then we search for the limbus region. So limbus is the very narrow region between the iris and the wide region of human eyes. And finally, with the eye center and a fitted elite model, we can estimate a gaze point on the corresponding touchscreen plane. So with a gaze trace, we would like to determine its corresponding keystroke. We will use the pattern lock keyboard as the example, and we modify the method a little bit to accommodate different keyboards. For this module, the first step is trace segmentation. So we need to look for the turning point between two segments. For example, the red point in the example on the right. So for two adjacent points in the trace, we can define a vector from the preceding point to the subsequent one, and we can calculate the corresponding vector angle. Our observation is that within the same segment, the vector angle remains similar. So we do trace segmentation in these two steps. First, we look for 2 points, I1 and I2. So I1 is the first point whose angle change is larger than a preset threshold, and I2 is the next point whose angle change falls back within the threshold again. And presumably, the points between I1 and I2 are the turning segment. We then select the one point with the largest angle change and assign as the turning point. And next, we do segment decoding. So before going into the detail, we first look at the layout of pattern lock keyboard. There are 9 points on the layout. As a result, there are only 24 legitimate segments. In this step, for each segment derived from previous step, we will find its M candidate. And M here is a system parameter. For example, here we give one example when M is equals to 2. For the red segment here, its two candidates is number 1 and number 2. Number 2 here, because they are the two nearest segments. And the next step is candidate pattern generation. So given n segment and each with m candidate, the total number of possible pattern is n to the power of n. In these slides, we will give one example when n equal to 2 and m equal to 2 to illustrate the whole process. So the process actually follows a certain order. For example, first we use the first candidate of segment 1, first candidate of second segment. We combine them together and to generate pattern 1. Similarly, we use the first candidate of segment 1, second candidate of segment 2 to generate pattern 2. We repeat this process and we can generate all the 4 patterns. The result is shown here. After we generate the pattern, we also need to check their validity. So recall that there are actually 9 points in the layout of pattern log keyboard. So each pattern the patterns can start from arbitrary one. We still take the pattern 1 from previous slide as the example, and we can see that not all the starting points are valid, and only, for example, the 4th and 7th points are valid because the whole pattern will be inside the keyboard. And we can imagine that actually, for a gate trace, it can generate many candidates. So we need some heuristic rules to rank all the candidates. Here is the 3 rules we use in the example in our paper. For example, rule number 1, we require to follow the order of pattern generation. And for rule number 2, we can look at the example here. For the J-shaped pattern in here, it actually has 5 valid results. And we rank the one with the largest total length as with the highest rank. And also for rule number 3, we use the starting point of different results to determine their ranking. That's how we rank result 2, 3, 4, 5. So up to now, we only talk about the case for pattern log keyboard. From next, we'll briefly talk about PIN and alphabetical keyboard. We use the 4-digit PIN keyboard as example. The main difference compared with pattern log keyboard is that right now the user will tap rather than slide on the keyboard, and also the user may tap the same key for multiple times. And we modify the method a little bit depending on how many segments we can obtain from a 4-digit PIN. For example, if the number of segments is 3, then we don't need any modification. And if the segment is only 1 or 2, we do need modification. We use 2 simple examples to illustrate. For illustration, for example, for the example here, we know that using previous method, we know that the input keys must be key 4, key 1, and key 9, and there is one missing key here. The missing key can be any of the 3 keys, key 4, key 1, key 9. So the possible pins can be 4419, 4119, and 4199. And we also see that the key 5 is also within the pattern. So another possible candidate is 4159. And similarly, we can apply the approach to the case when there's only 1 segment. So due to time limit, I will pass it. And finally, we will work on the alphabetical keyboard. And this is the most challenging because for 2 reasons. The first reason is that, so compared to the PIN keyboard, actually, the area of the alphabetical keyboard is even smaller, while there's many more keys. And also, for PIN keyboard, for keyboard, we know that either 4 of 6 keys are tapped, but for the alphabetical keyboard, we don't know the exact number. And we do it like this. We first transform the traditional alphabetical keyboard into a quasi-PIN keyboard. In this way, we can reuse previous method. And also, we apply some modification. Start from now, I will very briefly go through our experimental result. So we use camcorder to record high-definition video. We use iPhone 6s and Android and Google Nest 6 for experiment. And in total, we recruited 22 participants. And all the experiments have been approved by the IRB Institute at ASU. And to ensure the reliability of our experiment, we also consider task randomization and user fatigue. And we use top K accuracy as the evaluation metric. And the table here shows our result on pattern lock keyboard. Compared to the 2017 DSS paper, their result is much better. The main reason is that they use the assumption in that paper is that they can directly capture the finger movement. We don't have such assumption. So the eye trace we use can only reflect the finger movement on the touch screen indirectly. Therefore, we only achieve a lower inference accuracy. And the result for pin keyboard is similar to those in pattern lock keyboard. We also compare our result to our result on word inference with existing system. And we also conduct other experiments, for example, sentence inference and also the robustness of our system. So I would like to mention that there are two main limitations in our system. One is that the accuracy is not high due to the noisy nature of the gauge trace. And the second is that our tech only works under a small recording angle because of the eye tracking technique we are using. And we also propose some countermeasure in our paper. So in conclusion, our system EyeTell is a novel video-assisted keystroke inference attack on mobile devices. It only assumes that the attacker is able to capture the victim's eye movement. And through comprehensive experiments on different soft keyboard and under different environment, we have confirmed the feasibility of the system. Thank you for all your attention, and I will be happy to answer all possible questions.
So we have time for a couple of questions.
Yes, my name is Jared Smith. I'm from the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. So the camcorder makes sense as like a general camcorder video camera. But for an app like Facebook or Google or someone to do this, they would need to use a phone camera. And I'm not really sure if you investigated that. Can you give me some ideas there, some hints?
Yes, so actually our assumption, if you can use, for example, the webcam of the victim, actually the result can be much better. Right now we use camcorder and we record a video from a long distance. That's why we only obtain a very noisy gauge trace.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thanks.
Hillary Orman here in the center.
Thank you.
So I admire the thoroughness of the work and the research. But a human body is a complex interconnected system, and all finger movements actually arise from the shoulder. I would hypothesize that you actually could, from a video of the neck, get the same accuracy, and that almost any measurement of the body is probably going to give away the finger movements, really, and that the only real countermeasure, which I think is feasible, is to simply have a sensor on the head connected to your mobile device and to think that finger movement. And I bet that's detectable. What do you think of these biometrics?
Yeah, so actually the direction you mentioned is a very good one, and actually within our group we are also consider such a direction.
Thank you for the talk. My name is Marmara. I'm from York University in Canada. So I have two questions, both of them small. Regarding the very first question, what stopped you from using the phone camera instead of the camcorder?
Because, for example, if you will use the camera of the smartphone or the victim's smartphone, then we assume that the attacker is able to obtain video from the victim device. That's a much stronger assumption. And right now, we only assume that the attacker record the video from a distance. The attacker does not have any capability to store anything from the victim's device.
Okay, so second question, thank you. Second question is regarding the QWERTY keyboard. So I saw that you conducted some experiments regarding the QWERTY, like the alphabetical keyboard and things like that. So typically more confidential information such as credit card numbers, credit card passwords, etc. are inputted using that kind of keyboard. I'm not sure if you already discussed results and accuracy, like robustness, in terms of that keyboard, or maybe I missed it. If so, could you go over that again regarding experiments you conducted for that?
Yeah, so actually we also have experiments on inferring English words on alphabetical keyboard. We did not include the result in the presentation, so perhaps you can go to the paper for more detail.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm sorry, but in the interest of not keeping people too much away from lunch, we'll keep the last question for the offline track. So let's thank our speaker again.